You're listening to a Times Higher Education podcast.
Hi there, and welcome to Campus Talks, the podcast in which we seek advice and insights to support your work in higher education. I'm Miranda Prynne, campus editor, and today I'm finding out how one US institution has led the way in embedding AI across the curriculum, what this has involved, and what has been learnt in the process. Many universities are now racing to embed AI literacy as a core skill across their courses and equip students with knowledge of these digital tools that may prove critical to future careers. But the University of Florida had embarked on this mission years before large language models exploded into all our consciousness with the arrival of ChatGPT in 2022. So, to find out more about this pioneering project, what sparked it, and where it has got to, I spoke to Hans van Oostrom, director of the University of Florida's AI Squared Centre, which supports the university's AI initiatives across teaching and research, including the university-wide Undergraduate Certificate in AI Fundamentals and Applications. Hans, himself an engineer with extensive experience in AI and precision learning, took over as director this year. Prior to this, he was the founding chair of the Department of Engineering Education in the university's College of Engineering. As you'll hear, he explains how the university has gone about fostering AI expertise across its many academic departments, and the institution's methodical approach to building AI literacy training into as many courses as possible. But first, I asked him how he defines AI literacy in 2026. Hi Hans, thanks for joining me today. How is life in sunny Gainesville just now?
Oh, great. Not so sunny right now, but don't always have sun or palm trees, or Florida's a big state.
It is a big state. It is a big state, and I'm speaking from the micro country that is England. So all things are relative. Now, you took over as director of the University of Florida's A Squared Centre a year ago with the remit of progressing the university's AI initiatives across teaching and research, and you oversee the university-wide Undergraduate Certificate in AI Fundamentals and Applications, which is essentially a course open to all undergrads regardless of their major. And I'm sure there's much more that I haven't even touched on there, but before we get into the detail of that work, I want to know, what does AI literacy mean to you?
Yeah, I think that's the big question, right? So what is it that our students need to know as they leave our institution and they go into the workforce? It's changing daily. And so I think what we have said is, like always, students need to continue to learn throughout their lifetime. And the same is true for their AI skills. So what we aim to do is teach them foundations. What is AI? How does it work? Once you understand how it works, maybe you can interpret the results you get and give that some value. How do you use it ethically and responsibly? How could you use it in your discipline? So these are sort of the three components that we use. We don't believe that we need to teach students how to use specific tools. The tools will change every month. There's a new tool out there, so we don't have to teach the students how to do that. But once they have these foundations, they can build on that. And I think that's the important part. I find that once they understand how AI works, what goes in it, so you can interpret what comes out of it. That's really the key.
Yes, and University of Florida's strengths and interest in AI actually precedes the explosion of large language models into most of our lives. So has your understanding and what the university's focused on in terms of AI literacy changed since 2022 when ChatGPT and indeed others did suddenly appear on the scene?
Yeah, I think you're right. We started before all the large language models came out, and we sort of saw that coming. We have a great partner as from Chris Malinkowski, one of our alums, who is co-founder of NVIDIA, helped us get started early. We didn't know what the large language models could do. And so yes, that has changed some of the things that we do, but it really has only expanded where we can use AI models. And so we use AI across the curriculum, meaning we want AI embedded in every major, every part of our university, because students are going to be affected in their workforce after they graduate. And every student will be affected. So we do want to make sure that we train all of our students in all of our disciplines. And so we did find that we didn't have enough faculty knowledgeable enough about AI to apply it in their discipline. It is very hard to find a historian that knows about AI, especially in 2022. So what we've done is we set up extensive training programs for faculty here in our AI Squared Center. And we've also hired new faculty who had some of that experience so they could serve as that sort of mentor in these different colleges. And so we've been able to train faculty and hire faculty in all the colleges. And that then has resulted in curriculum that was developed for our students to take. So it is, I think, an ongoing thing. It is ongoing what kind of education we teach, how it applies to the discipline, how students in these disciplines learn about AI. So it's ongoing.
Yeah, of course, and ever changing. And just finally on the AI literacy, I know you say it's about laying the foundations really so that students can then take those off and apply them in different contexts and apply them with different tools. But are there any specific capabilities that you could perhaps point to that you feel a student would need before you'd refer to them as AI literate?
Yeah, I think there's a certain amount of background knowledge, and that doesn't mean that we teach students all the math that goes into AI models. I think that's for a select group of people that want to create new models, but sort of understand how digital data is put into models and how the queries are coming, giving you results. So I think that part is important. And the best way for students to get a sense of that is to build their own small model. We have the fastest supercomputer owned by an educational institution here at the University of Florida. So we leverage that and we allow students to build models. And so in our foundations course, students are creating a model that detects the type of sea turtle. And they feed it images and build a model, and then they test their model, and they can see that relationship of if I really put high quality data in these models, they perform really well. If I don't do that so well, they don't perform well. If I don't put enough data, they don't perform well. So it is sort of that sense that I think is very important. The practical things of running the models, we let them do that as well. Obviously, there's a ton of models out there. We do let them use them. I think there's always in academia now the discussion about, well, I don't want my students to use AI because now they no longer think. I don't believe that. I think you need to let them use the best tools for the job. But that also means that you can't have the job be so easy, AI can just do it for you. And so it ties a lot to how do we assess student work? What do we let the students do? How are the students contributing intellectually to what they're doing? And so I think those are all the important parts for AI literacy, because ultimately, if they go to a job and they just use AI and they don't validate the results and they don't actually know how these results are generated, what to do with them, then we have failed. So I think critical thinking skills are still extremely important, and perhaps even more important now, because they have to see what this AI, which is really another tool, a mentor, it's something that gives you results that you can't just take at face value. You do have to continue to be that human in the loop.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, your description of the fact that students get to build their own model, I mean, what a fantastic way to demystify this the sort of black box perception of AI and understand that relationship between what's going into it and what's coming out, and thus have a more critical eye to it. Now, of course, the University of Florida, you've mentioned this already, but it was one of the first institutions to really embrace AI across the curriculum and to make it a core literacy for all majors. And this decision has been widely praised. The University of Florida was named a new Ivy by Forbes just a few weeks ago, in large part due to its strengths in prepping students in AI use. So, based on the experience that Florida has accrued in doing this, how does university go about embedding AI? What were the initial steps involved?
Yeah, so we have lots of courses, right? We're a very large institution. We have 61,000 students. And so we're not aiming to put it in every course, but we do want a significant number of courses all throughout the curriculum. So AI across the curriculum. When you do that, you have to make a definition of what that really means. What does it mean to have AI in a course? And so we have created what is called an AI course designation that has different levels. And so the levels are enable AI, which is just use some AI tools in the course. It's predominantly a discipline-based course. We have no AI, where we have 50% or more content in AI. Again, a course applied to a discipline, use AI, and then create AI where you build new things, and then AI ethics. And so we have these course designations. We've created a faculty committee that's called the AI Education Committee that looks at proposals from faculty that want to get a designation. And so we evaluate, is there enough AI content in the course? Is it the right designation? We have student learning outcomes attached to these designations. Are they listed in the syllabus? And so we review a course, and then they get this designation, which goes into our course system, so students can actually search for AI courses in their discipline. And so we have over 200 courses designated currently. We have a backlog of maybe another 50 or so courses that we need to add, and students can take these courses. And so when I looked at the spring schedule, the spring semester just finished, we had 177 courses with an AI designation on the schedule. And so that's been our approach to standardize what it means to be an AI course, and driven by faculty, and then designating these courses so students can find them. And so we find that enrollments are booming in these courses.
So these courses, you're designating the AI input to different disciplinary areas or courses. Thus, students can enroll on these, but it wouldn't be the case that any student could just do any of them. It does need to sort of presumably align with the major that they are focused on.
Yeah, that's correct. There's certainly some that are more general that don't have prerequisites, but the ones that are sort of embedded in the major, they will have prerequisites that you have to fulfill in that major. Not all the majors are there. We'd like to get there. So currently, it's largely driven by student desire to learn more about AI, and they use their elective credits to fill in with AI courses if they don't do the separate certificate that we also have.
I'm interested in how this project has evolved as you've learned what works best when embedding AI and perhaps what can prove challenging. Have there been any changes along the way?
Yeah, I think the training of faculty and hiring new faculty has been crucial for us, because when we first started, it was really difficult to find enough people that are interested in embedding AI into their courses. And part of that was lack of knowledge, and not because it didn't fit or they didn't think it was important. And so we've been doing more and more training and making training available. A lot of our pioneers that did this over the years, they've taken our 4-day training, which we offer between semesters. We have one coming up soon, where faculty get together in a group of about 35 and have in-person training for 4 days, but also be able to discuss among the different disciplines in person. And that has really been helpful, also making connections with that group. So they're all on the same campus and they may operate in different disciplines, but they all want to try to do similar things. And the problem with that is we're not training a lot of people at once. So it's smaller groups. And so we have just released an online version of that content. And so we're hoping that faculty are going to complete that. It leads to a micro-credential, which we've created, and that can be helpful. But for us, the main thing is let's train faculty to use AI effectively. And they're the ones that really understand best how it would serve their discipline. I know about AI, but I don't know about all these disciplines. I can see how it fits my discipline, but I don't see how it fits other disciplines. So for us, that ramping that up has really been a key. We didn't necessarily recognize that right from the beginning, but we've now seen that the more we do that, the more courses we get, the more opportunities for students it creates. So that's, I think, really important.
Yeah, as you say, but you need people to understand how to put AI in the context in which they're working and teaching as well. You also mentioned earlier that you had recruited a large number of faculty with real interest and expertise in AI. What difference has that made? Like, what's their role been?
Yeah, so what we did was we convinced, we're a state funded university or public university, and we convinced the state that we needed more expertise in AI. And because we serve as one of the universities in Florida that provides a lot of information and knowledge to other institutions and other people in the state found it helpful to fund these new faculty. And so while we got funding for over 100 faculty, what we did do was we placed those in all of our disciplines. So all of our 16 colleges got some of these faculty, some more than others. So the alternative approach would have been to hire computer scientists and engineers to help develop more AI. But that wouldn't have gotten us where we are today, which is AI across the curriculum. So these faculty really serve as sort of a seed in each of these colleges. They are embedded in these departments in the colleges and they're the experts. And so we see people helping others, their fellow faculty in their discipline, get started as well. Yes, they may have to take training, but the application to the discipline is something they're really good at. And so we do see that when we look at our Hypergator supercomputer use, when we first started the first version of it about 4 years ago, it was largely used by computer scientists and engineers. But now that has gradually moved to use by all of our colleges. And that's the other impact of placing faculty in the colleges because they do research and they teach. And so we can certainly see the research use from all the colleges on Hypergator increasing. And it's not just computer science and engineering.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So were these new recruits, were they largely academics in certain disciplines who just also happened to be working closely with AI and have really good experience in using it? Or were they AI specialists who you then placed in these different, colleges and schools?
No, almost all of them were grounded in a traditional discipline and were already using AI in their research. And so there are not many of those, right? So we were also lucky to be one of the first people to try to hire them. So we did have to do some recruitment. Obviously, our supercomputer is a great recruitment tool because they get to use that, and not every institution has that. And so we were a bit lucky in the timing of this, but they're all grounded in the discipline. And I think that's really important because if you put an engineer or computer scientist in a traditional, say, a history department, they're going to have a really long learning curve to try to understand that discipline before they can even understand how they're going to apply things. And the risk is that they just become sort of oh, can you program this for me? And that's not the kind of people we want. We really want a very tight interconnection between the discipline and the technology. And I think that's what we have achieved.
Well, that's why I asked the question, actually, because of exactly what you've described. If you had a historian working with AI, working with other historians to help them understand how they might use it, that is likely to be an easier communication than someone coming from a completely different field. Brilliant. Now, we've talked quite a lot about the AI supercomputer, which undoubtedly has been a massive string in the University of Florida's bow. And this AI computer called Hypergator was donated by alumnus and NVIDIA co-founder Chris Malachowski in 2020. So some time ago now. Can you explain what role this computer has played and continues to play in the university's AI strategy?
Yeah, I think the first iteration of it, so that was version 1 that Chris donated. None of that hardware is actually still in our data center because hardware changes so rapidly, and we're currently at version 4. But that initial version that really started before the large language models came out was really the impetus for us to get started. And so that sort of got us going. I know Chris asked our provost, if I give you a supercomputer, what would you do with it? And our provost, Joe Glover, he answered and said, I'll embed AI across the curriculum. So from the get-go, that was the starting point. And so the hardware has enabled that. I think the supercomputer itself, I mean, we have to come to a realization that there's this boom in AI because we have the hardware that can build these models. We've had the math for the models for years, 20, 30 years. We gradually got more digital data we can throw at it, but it was the compute power that really created the boom. And so at the same time, NVIDIA was working with OpenAI to build their supercomputers that they were starting to create ChatGPT with. We started at the University of Florida with ours. And so that really early initial one was really key. That led to bigger growth and really implementing AI across the curriculum, getting more researchers, getting more research, and ultimately needing to upgrade our Hypergator. And that ultimately was, again, funding from the state and other sources that we were able to continually upgrade because technology changes so quickly that the cycle is not 3 or 4 years for the hardware. It's really almost like 1 or 2. And so it does cost a significant amount of money, but I think for us, that's been useful. We have researchers running their research on their grants on there. We do charge faculty to use Hypergator, so there's some cost recovery. But in the end, just having the tool available and the machine available is critical for a lot of the research that's being done.
Yes, and as you point out, also in attracting talented faculty who really want to engage in AI and use it and be at the forefront of this work, it undoubtedly, while Hypergator has played a huge role, I think it also needs to be acknowledged that it was a fairly visionary move by Joe Glover to think, right, how can I use this? Or how can we use this? Let's look at AI across the curriculum. And it arguably means Florida was ahead of the game in something that an awful lot of institutions are now desperately trying to catch up on because AI is now so prolific in a very short space of time. However, as with anything, I'm sure it hasn't been a simple and easy trajectory to get to where you are now. What major challenges have you come up against when trying to roll out AI across the curriculum and also perhaps in creating new AI specific courses and how have you navigated these?
Yeah, I think there's always obstacles. I mean, we have 6,700 faculty here at the university, and they're not all loving AI. So there's certainly, just like society, a group that doesn't want to deal with it at all. And what I often say is, why don't I show you in 10 minutes something that AI can do to make your life easier? And then you may be understanding why students want to use it, why the world wants to use it. And yes, there are certainly lots of aspects to it, and not everybody is going to go that direction. So I think for us, it really was the training that helped, because we show people what you can do with it, how it works, and how it can be applied to the discipline. I think the barrier for us now is to get more faculty trained. And obviously, the ones we trained in the initial waves were the ones that are already interested, right? They may have been dabbling with it, at home. And the ones that I really want to try to get involved is those others, or the AI skeptics that are out there everywhere. I think having the knowledge allows you to make the informed decision, and that's really important. So I don't want people just to decide because of what they read in the paper, AI is going to destroy the world, or whatever people read. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's a disruptive tool. It's disrupting higher ed, but it is here. It is not going away. By saying you can't use it or ignoring it isn't going to make it go away. It's here. And so you might as well figure out what you can do with it and how best to use it in education, and how best to prepare the students for the world. But I think that's an uphill battle still for us. I would love to be in front of all the faculty and tell them something that they can do with AI. But at the same time, it requires changes, and academia doesn't change very rapidly. And that's, I think, part of the problem is the world is changing very rapidly, but we're got to change too. We got to change our curriculum, perhaps not even incremental changes like adding a course here or there. I think we really have to think about what is it that our students need to learn. Some of our majors haven't significantly changed in 40 or 50 years. And is that right? Is that what we need? What are these core skills students need? And I would argue there are things like critical thinking and problem solving. And I mean, I graduated a long time ago. Do I use everything that I've learned? No, but as a package, it taught me how to have a lifelong learning approach, critically think, and problem solve. And I think that's what's really critical. You need a foundation for that. There's no doubt about that. So let's redefine what that foundation is. Let's redefine how we can use AI in that. But that's sometimes a very difficult discussion to have, because it is ultimately very disruptive and a lot of work. But I think we need to go there.
Yes. I mean, you've mentioned disruption, you mentioned work, but what do you think drives AI reluctance most commonly? What is it? Fear, the unknown? What do you think are the kind of major blockers?
I think it's largely fear. I think the disruption itself, people naturally don't like disruption. So there is that. There's a lot of discussion about how it's changing jobs, and people are fearful about that. I think my answer to that is, well, people that are knowledgeable about AI and can apply it in their discipline are going to be more successful than those that don't. So that's a driving force. If we look at, say, the field of computer science, which there's fewer students studying computer science now because AI is going to take over that field. I frankly think that's ludicrous. In a digital age we live in, who needs fewer computer scientists? I think we need more of them. What they do will be different. So you got to understand that. But we certainly don't need fewer of them. So I'm happy to see that at the University of Florida, we have not seen a decline in computer science applications. And I think part of it is too that students sense that here at the University of Florida, they can learn the AI skills that they need in order to be a computer scientist and to do the work that they have to do. But I think worldwide that there is a decline. And so I think part of it is fear, like I'm going to study this, but I don't get a job, or I don't know what these jobs look like. I don't understand anymore what I'm supposed to do. So I think that's the largest thing. And there is some level, perhaps not in higher ed, but people think that AI is going to take over the world and going to think by itself and have a conscious. And I don't think we're anywhere near there. I'm not sure that we'll get there. People are still the crucial, important part in decision making. And yes, there's going to be people applying AI inappropriately where they don't make those decisions. They're not involved in that process. And so we really have to train people that they are important and they have to be a part of this whole process.
Yeah, so let's come on to that because that is certainly within the higher education context, one of the major criticisms of AI is the fact it is a threat
Mhm.
to students learning in all sorts of ways. And you have talked about the absolute fundamental need for humans to be involved to develop their critical thinking, their decision-making abilities, their ability essentially to oversee these tools and understand that what the tool is doing is good and effective. So, there is a growing body of evidence to show that certainly relying on AI for certain tasks and possibly the wrong tasks or however it's framed can reduce cognitive development by simply shortcutting the need to think.
Yeah.
So, how in a university where you are so focused on getting students engaged with AI, how do you balance the need for students to develop cognitive skills such as critical thinking and indeed empathy and reflective analytical skills against encouraging them also to engage with AI?
I think there's great opportunities, but I do think it requires a change in what we teach and how we assess it. I think assessment of student work has been eroded since the COVID pandemic. A lot of it went online, never came back. And the amount of unproctored work that students are doing at home, where they can get help from anything, anybody, anything. They can use AI, even though the professor says you cannot use AI, but then don't send them the work home, right? So instead of just doing it that way, let's create ways of assessing students' work where they can use AI. So I think you need a lot of cognitive knowledge and skills to understand and interpret what AI has given you and how to make it better. Even in a writing assignment, let the students use a AI as a first draft, critique it, make it better. There's always things that are not right, and there are things that can be better. So let the students do that part. So how you structure the assignment and how you assess the students are really the critical parts. And I think we've moved away from authentic assessment of student work that is proctored. And that's ultimately a big problem. I'm writing a paper that's entitled AI Exposed the Lack of Rigor in Assessment because I really believe that. I think the rigor of assessment of student work was already there. We just ignored it and didn't do it. And now we have AI, and AI can do the work. And now we suddenly feel like students are cheating, but they're really just using the tools that are out there. And if the assignment was so easy that AI can do it perfectly, is that really what you want to do? And so I do think that there's lots of opportunity to use AI and have the students critically think, but it requires a different thinking from us, the professors, to entice that and to create materials and assessments that do that for the students.
You're far from alone in making that observation about AI exposing the lack of rigor
Right,
in assessment. I know on campus we have had numerous authors, writing about exactly that, really,
yeah,
arguing AI hasn't broken assessment, it's simply shown its weaknesses, and arguably that's a real benefit that now these things are being rethought
right.
forcibly when they weren't working brilliantly beforehand. Are there any situations in which you actually think AI should be taken out of the equation, like students should actually be forced to sit in a place where they do not have access to AI or the internet and tested in an old-fashioned way, or asked to do an assignment in such a way that AI couldn't be part of it? Do you think there's still a place for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially in lower division courses where you're teaching foundations, where You got to have these foundations before you can use these higher level tools. And so in order to build those foundations that potentially AI can do very well as well, you will need to have students work assessed in a proctored environment where maybe they don't use AI. I mean, that is sort of like when we do a more complex problem that's open-ended, we let the students use any materials, textbooks, anything, the internet, anything that they can put their hands on to solve the problem. It's about the problem solving at those higher level courses. But at the lower level courses, we're not going to do an open book exam. We want to see what the student knows. And the same with AI tools. And so I think you do need enough proctored examinations where they don't use the tools and build that foundation. Once you have that foundation, then you can use those tools and be more effective in solving problems.
That's interesting. I think that's really important to acknowledge that you need to lay the foundations. Then you've got the knowledge where you can use the tools with a critical eye. So, for instance, the essay you refer to, getting AI to write an essay and then critiquing the essay. But you need to know how to write a good essay in order to do that. So at some point prior to that, you will have needed to generate your own essay. Is that a good example?
Yeah, absolutely. And what we used to do previously is we look at the end result and we evaluate the end result. But that's really not the learning exercise. The learning exercise is what's the process of creating the content, creating this essay. How do you create an initial version, a subsequent version? How do you improve it? How do you structure it? And so I think that's really the key is the process, and we need to evaluate other students using a correct process to develop this end product. Because if we're just evaluating the end product, it becomes very difficult to decide what was the intellectual content that the student contributed versus a tool. So certainly, yes, you need some basic skills in creating that initial version and doing these revisions. And perhaps you don't use any AI for the first time that you're learning that. But then I think it is important also to embed AI in that process and do it at the right places, and then still understand what is the process that was used to create this end result. And I think, again, that's a change in thinking on how we assess, how we evaluate, and what is it that is important. And that's difficult sometimes.
Well, change, as you say, is always
Yeah.
difficult for all of us. But focusing on the process rather than the final product not only arguably moves the dial towards looking at the learning, but also actually I can see there's a psychology behind that for students as well, because students for so many years have been trained to think just the end product is the only thing that matters, because that's of course what they're graded on. And it's hopefully maybe could make some difference in moving it psychologically for the students to understand that it is in fact the learning that is the key part of this process, and that is where the value sits. We shall see, but maybe that's a very optimistic
No,
hope.
but I think you're right. I think, these are the kinds of skills we want students to have for the rest of their lives, right? It's not the little bit of knowledge I have Google, I don't need to memorize things. I can look it up, right? How did that work again? Oh, let me Google it. So, when they're 20, 30 years out from their education, it is these critical thinking skills and processes and problem solving skills that they've learned that are going to be important.
Yeah. And what do you observe of how students' use of AI changes once they complete, for instance, the AI fundamentals course, or simply get a better understanding of how AI works and really what it is and what and the various tools available to them?
Yeah, I'm really impressed actually how students are using AI. We did some interviews on the street right here in the middle of campus of students, and how are you using AI and what are you using it for? And they're really using it now as a study partner. So they used to have study groups in the library, and now they're doing a lot with that with AI on that because they can do it anytime they want with the right materials. And so they're really utilizing the tool to benefit them, not to do their work. I think the other thing I hear is students are afraid that they're going to be caught for cheating even if they didn't use AI. And I think that's a big problem for us to resolve as well. And again, it's part of how do you assess students and what do you allow them to use and under what conditions, and is it proctored or unproctored. But I think the students, I was really impressed how good they are in using the tools to their benefit. So I do think the training that we give, they will not have learned that by just buying a subscription to one of the tools and doing script engineering and seeing where it gets them. They really need to be shown how they can apply it and how they can really use it to their benefit.
That's great to hear. Look, that's all we've got time for. But Hans, thank you so much for talking to me about this. It's a huge topic, but arguably the most transformative force in higher education right now. So great to get your insights on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do it.
Hans offers a really balanced take on AI there. Clearly, he is a real expert in AI within his own domain, and he is actively advocating for and driving greater engagement with these tools across his institution. But he's not evangelical about AI. He is, for instance, very clear that humans are, I quote, the crucial important part in decision making, and he makes it clear he doesn't believe machines will ever replace us or develop consciousness in the way we understand it. There's also an acknowledgement of the need for foundations of learning and understanding to be laid in the absence of AI before effective AI mastery can be developed. And this may be where the future challenge lies for educators in a world where it does seem that AI may infiltrate almost everything. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do like, share, or subscribe. You can find more episodes of Campus Talks featuring experts from all over the world, alongside loads more advice and insight relating to building AI literacy and many other areas of university work, all on campus. And that's at timeshighereducation.com/campus. We'll be back with you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.
You're listening to a Times Higher Education podcast.